Hello, welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and this is absolutely the place to be if you're feeling stuck in any place in your life. Through my seminar and coaching business, Wings Unfolded, I help people who ultimately love what they're doing, but they're not exactly sure where it's going. My MO in making these videos, if you haven't noticed yet, if you've been watching for a while, you may have noticed that I actually make these videos for myself in a lot of ways. I use them as an opportunity to grow through my own uncertainty and through my own places where I'm feeling stuck. And I do that by sharing what's going on in my life a little bit, and I share, what kinds of issues are coming up for me, how I'm working through them, and my hope is that we can grow in uncertainty together. Because after all, the two most important lessons I've learned about being uncertain and stuck is that in life, the only certainty is uncertainty. And the other thing is that my biggest opportunities for growth usually happen during my biggest times of being stuck. So I hope that you can gain some insight from these videos and learn a little something from what I have to offer. So friends, someone doesn't like me out there. There's a situation that's happening in the workspace, and I just get the feeling that someone's not too excited about me, my presence, what I have to offer. And that's a really hard place for me to be personally, because I really like to try and be kind and to think about other people's perspectives and to be the best version of myself in every situation. But, despite all of my best efforts, my best intentions, I can't control the fact that there are going to be other people in my life who have a different impression of me. I once believed in my life, I don't believe this any longer, but I once believed that in order for me to really like myself fully and completely, I would need to feel like I was liked by everyone else. Obviously, that doesn't really work in this world. You have to like yourself before anybody else can like you at all. So, it's important to understand that we're all human beings, meaning we all view our lives through the filters that we accumulate. Our filters include our beliefs and our ideas, our experiences, our values. And when we view our world through those things, they can end up being interpreted in very different ways than somebody else in your life, because somebody else in your life is looking at things through their own filters. And that's really important to consider, especially when, in this particular situation, I am being misunderstood by someone in my life, and I have to recognize that they're using filters to see me, and I don't have any control over that. So, my personal belief too is that the ultimate goal in this existence, should we choose to accept it, is that we learn from each other. I learn from you, you learn from me. We're constantly in this dance of learning with each other on a daily basis. And some of what we learn are really hard lessons. There's no way around that. And so I wanted to kind of walk you through a current hard lesson I'm going through right now, the lesson of being misunderstood by someone. So this situation that I'm currently going through, I'm not going to go into total detail, but it's a work situation, and someone in my life is not seeing clearly where I'm coming from. And it seems like every single time I talk to this person, I have to re-clarify, restate what my intentions are, what my goals are. And then a little time will pass and this person will, want to tell me exactly what I told them about how I see my role in this project that we're working on. And even though it sounds to me like we're on the same page, it's almost like this person isn't quite seeing that I see that we're on the same page, and vice versa. So, to be clear, nothing has really happened yet. It's just, this project is in the beginning stages, and we seem to be having this same conversation over and over again about what my role is or should be within the organization. And so there are all kinds of stories that I can tell myself about why this person isn't hearing me when I acknowledge and validate what he has to say about his vision of my role and my agreeance on that vision. Some of the stories that I've told myself include, there must be someone behind the scenes who's really jealous of me and they want to keep me in place. Or maybe the organization is worried about money and they're having second thoughts about whether or not I should even be there. I don't know. Or maybe it's that I said or did something that was offensive to someone, but for whatever reason, they're not being direct with me about that. Could be. Or maybe it's just a toxic environment to work in. And maybe it's time for me to pick up my toys and go home. It could be. I don't know. Or maybe it's that they're interested in what I have to offer, maybe it's that they're not interested in what I have to offer, but they just haven't, figured out a way to tell me that. It could be any one of those things. It could be none of those things, but suffice it to say that it's a natural human experience that when we come up to resistance to something, it's natural for us to come up with all kinds of stories about that. So ultimately, making up those stories, though, makes me feel more upset and frustrated. Some anger can come up, and I can start to feel really suspicious about everything that's happening. Making up the stories tends to put me on the defensive. It makes me want to make, rash decisions or take action that I haven't completely thought through. And ultimately, it doesn't really help me move forward in the issue to tell myself stories, because those stories aren't really rooted in reality. Or at least I don't know if they are or not, because they're stories that I tell myself. The stories that I tell myself ultimately end up keeping me stuck in a situation. And when I'm stuck like this, my inner critic messages really start to come up too. And, my inner critic messages, or sometimes I call them my gremlins, my gremlin messages tend to be things like, no matter how hard I try, it's not good enough. Or they really don't like me. Nobody likes me. Or I did something wrong. I should have done this or that. I never get it right. Or maybe it's, I'm just not good enough to do this project. I should just give up. So those are some of the inner critic, the inner voice messages that I've been, noticing in this current situation in my life. But it's really hard to find any kind of solution in your life when you're stuck in that place of listening to the stories and the inner critic, right? We end up constricting ourselves and any option that we might be able to take. And we end up taking action out of fear or anger, which isn't usually the best option. Oftentimes when we act out of fear and anger, we look back on what happened and think, oh, that wasn't my best self in that moment. So, it's really important in these times to basically take a step back and notice where you're not acting from information that's actually rooted in reality. So what am I doing with my current situation? I'm trying to follow some steps. Trying to take a somewhat of a step-by-step process in this current situation. And you may have noticed that I tend to love a step-by-step process. So I shall share with you what I'm trying out right now. So the first step in this feeling misunderstood scenario that I'm experiencing is to stop. And this step can sometimes be really challenging. When you're really triggered by someone or something outside of you, especially when you're misunderstood by someone, it's totally natural and normal to want to correct their vision of you, and to try to explain like, no, that's not my intention. This is who I am. Blah, blah, blah. But sometimes that's not necessarily the best plan of action, especially if the other person isn't ready to hear that. Maybe they're in a space where they don't really want to know who you really are. So stopping in that moment of being triggered by someone else can be a really challenging one. The thoughts and emotions that come up for us are really hard to be with. It makes us want to take action to make those thoughts and feelings go away. But instead, what I'm trying to do right now is get out of certain thought loops or feeling loops. I'm trying to get out of a certain rut of how I'm feeling. And the way that I do that is that I might distract myself with something else. Maybe there's some other project that needs my attention, and this other project can uplift my energy for a little while. Or maybe I meditate for a little while and just try to turn off the negativity faucet in my mind. Sometimes I'll just go for a walk, and that really helps to, feel like I'm making forward progress without actually doing anything related to what's coming up for me. And of course, I vent to someone I trust, or someone's, plural. That's always a good way to at least get outside of you what your thoughts and feelings are. Sometimes you might be surprised by what actually comes out of your mouth, and you can see things in a little bit different light once you say them out loud. Or something else I like to do is write in my journal. And this is an opportunity to be totally uncensored, because hopefully nobody else is going to read it, right? It's just for you. So you can say whatever you want in your journal, because your journal's not going to tell. So that's something that I've been making use of. Sometimes it can be kind of funny to go back and look at what I've written, especially if I have been in that like really angry, frustrated space. Not that I'm laughing at myself, but just that, it's sort of energizing to see what comes up through that anger and frustration. So the second step for me is to challenge the thoughts that are coming up. I like to ask a lot of, how true is that? How true is it that I've done something wrong in this particular situation? How true is it that the other person doesn't like me? Is that really knowable? Does it matter? I start to challenge it like that. How true is it that I have botched things up, that it's past the point of no return? It's not, it's ultimately. So once you start challenging it like that, you can start to back away from the cliff and start to feel a little bit less charged about whatever is coming up. And, it's important to take each thought through to its total end, to really, verify the truth rating on it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how true is that statement? If it's like a 2 or a 3, then it's probably not true. If it's a 10, then ask yourself, how do I know it's a 10? Where am I getting my information? If it's just because, well, that's how I feel, then that may not be rooted in the complete truth. But if it's something where, oh, well, I got this email and it says blatantly right here, I don't like you. Well, okay, that's going to be a 10 then. So, it's important to take each thought through and verify the truth rating on that. But more often than not, our thoughts really have zero relationship to reality. As much as we'd like to think that we're in our logical selves, a lot of the time we are forming thoughts out of our emotional ocean. So once you've really looked at your thoughts one by one, you have the opportunity to now choose a whole new thought. If those thoughts really aren't working for you anymore, they're not really helping the situation, now is a good time to choose how else you'd like to think about this situation. So some new thoughts for me in my current situation might be, I am learning and growing through this experience. Relationships are a huge part of my process of growth as a human being. I know that and I recognize that. I also know and recognize that I'm the kind of person that does not like confrontation. I just want to pretend like everything is okay so we can get on to the good stuff. But ultimately, having those critical conversations are really the fuel for becoming better at relationships. So I know that if I really take myself through this experience, I'm going to learn and grow. And that's a really great thought to have in this moment, because on the other side of whatever happens, I'm going to get so much inner knowledge of myself. Another thought might be the challenges I'm facing will ultimately make me a better communicator. I like that, kind of forces me to look at, well, how am I communicating right now? How could I do it a little bit differently or better? Another thought could be, I'm developing a connection to other people every single time we interact. I like connecting with other people a lot. So this is an opportunity for me to do that in this experience. And then finally, a new thought could be, there really are no mistakes in this, only opportunities. So those thoughts tend to be much more broad spectrum, and they uplift me rather than keep me down. So try to think of new thoughts that you can have that sense of being uplifting and lessening the intensity of whatever emotions are coming up for you. Something really important to note is that if it's really hard for you to think of new thoughts, then you're probably not ready for this step yet. You're probably still feeling a lot of anger and frustration, and it's time to go back to step 1 and process that emotion first. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's really important to make sure that you process that emotion first. So one way that you can tell whether or not you've processed the emotion fully is if you detect any notes of sarcasm in your voice as you're trying to think of new thoughts, like, oh yeah, sure, I'm going to learn a lot from this. That's usually a sign that you're not ready to go on. It needs to feel genuine. So the third step in this process of confronting feeling misunderstood is to consider the other person's point of view without adopting that point of view as your own. That's a really important caveat there. Just because you're looking at someone else's point of view or looking from someone else's point of view doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree with it or that you have to agree with the actions that they're taking from that point of view. But it is valuable to look from that point of view. There's a lot of information to be gained from taking a different vantage point. You know, as I am viewing my life through the filters of my experiences, my beliefs, my values, I have to remember that so is everybody else. They're looking at their lives through their filters too, and their filters are going to be different than mine. So why wouldn't I want to take a step back and say, how else could they be seeing this? You know, where on this mountain that we're both standing on are they looking at this scenario? Maybe they're on a completely different mountain. I don't know. But they're seeing things differently, obviously, and there's a reason for that. So I personally don't think people have, you know, usually, maybe sometimes they do, but usually people aren't trying to look at things differently just to cause trouble in your life. Oftentimes it's just they see it differently because of their filters. All of our filters are there because they help us feel safe. They create a sense of certainty in our lives, whether or not that certainty is guaranteed. And they can also give us the illusion of control in our lives. I mean, who doesn't want to feel like they're in control and certain about their lives? I do. So why wouldn't I use my filters to create that sense of, okay, I see it clearly, but at the same time, you're not necessarily offering yourself the full picture of things. So you have to remember that it is an illusion when we look at life through our filters. Maybe there's some truth to it, but maybe not the whole truth. So, in the same token, I would hope that other people have the ability and interest to look at my position, you know, from my standpoint. I would hope that other people do that for me. And so if I'm expecting other people to do that for me, then I should probably definitely do that for other people. You know, maybe there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that I can't possibly know about, and it's probably none of my business anyway. Maybe the other person is really stressed out about something that, again, none of my business. Maybe the other person is just awkward socially. There's that possibility too. Or maybe, this is a good one, maybe I remind this other person of someone else in their life that really triggers them. And what they're actually doing is using me to work through those issues. So then I can get a little excited about that. I can say, well, this is interesting. I can help them ultimately work through some of those issues that maybe they have with someone else. But again, remember, it's ultimately none of our business what the other person is going through. But it's nice to be able to see things from a little bit different perspective and a little bit different light. So once you've gone through the first 3 steps that I've just outlined, now we get to step 4, where it's time to brainstorm about possible solutions. Brainstorming, you've probably done this for other things in your life, but this is just a list of all of the possibilities that you can think of to, take action. Don't censor yourself on this. Put any wild or silly solutions on the list. You might surprise yourself with your creativity, and you might think of something that you would never have thought of if you hadn't just unleashed yourself and allowed it to be there. So, for example, my list of dealing with this person that misunderstands me or seems to misunderstand where I'm coming from is to maybe email the person and clarify things with them, or to ask them questions like, what makes you see me this way? Or, what makes you say this? So that I can get a better understanding. Another possibility would be to call them just out of the blue and ask them those questions in person. Another would be to request a meeting with not just this other person, but some other people who are connected to the project, so that everyone can hold space for what's going on in this situation. Another one might be to just ignore the whole situation completely and move on with my life. This would be the ghosting tactic. Again, I'm not saying that that's what I want to do, but I'm going to put it on my list because it came to my brain. Another one could be to just go above the person's head. That would be interesting. Probably really bad, but it's kind of fun to think about. Another one would be to ask another person on this project to talk to the other person and ask clarifying questions. That might put them in the position of being a little bit more neutral. Not a bad idea. Another one is to quit this project altogether and embark on a new adventure like joining the circus. Who knows? Or it could be to invite this person over for dinner. Again, I know, kind of wild, but I'm just brainstorming here. Or maybe I'll send them a gift. I was thinking of you. Here's a gift. Or maybe it's to ask them for advice on something completely unrelated. Maybe that would bring me down to more of a human level for them, if that's what they needed in that moment, and to feel like they were helping me. I don't know. So that's, just an idea of creating a brainstorm list and really not censoring yourself. The final step, the fifth step, is to accept any and all outcomes, no matter what action you decide to take. And this involves relinquishing control. I know it's hard because we want to be able to control how other people think of us, but ultimately it's none of our business. So you can't really know how someone's going to respond to the action that you take until you actually take it. And ultimately, the only control you have at that point is whatever your next step is going to be. So knowing how you process the thoughts and emotions that come up for you, chances are really good that the outcome is going to be exactly what you need. Maybe not necessarily what you want, but it is going to be what you need in that moment. It's going to further your learning and your growth. And with acceptance, you remain open to the process of learning and connecting with other people. You can also ensure success by defining what success means to you. If you say, well, no matter what, I'm going to learn something from this, then that's your measure of success, right? Like, you're going to be a different person on the other side of this situation. And I know different isn't always good, but chances are really good if you've done the work and you've gone through the process, it is going to be really, really good for you. So after doing all of that work, what am I going to do about my current predicament of being misunderstood? Honestly, I haven't decided yet. I haven't really quite taken all of my steps yet. I'm not rushing this process at all. I'm allowing the process to unfold as it does. No matter what I decide, though, I'm going to know that I've processed this situation as deeply as possible. And when it comes time to take action, when I know the time is right, I'll know that I've done my homework and that action is going to feel right to me. And when it's time to assess my success in taking that action, I know that I've already achieved it. Whether or not I convince the other person of who I am, I already know who I am and what my intentions are. And that's really all I need to know ultimately. So it's up to the other person in the end to see me how they're going to see me, and it's up to me to accept that they're going to see me how they're going to see me through their filters and all. So if you're feeling misunderstood in some way in your life, let me know what you think of this episode. I'd love to hear what you're trying out in your life. And I'd really be happy to have a conversation with you about how your experience of being misunderstood is keeping you stuck in some way. Either way, let me know how this episode resonates with you. You can do that in the comments below. And my cat is evidently letting me know what she thinks of this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm always so grateful for your presence whenever it is that you choose to watch. And I always love hearing your feedback about what you want to hear about in the future as well. So please like or share these videos with friends and family who might benefit from the topics. And I'm starting to schedule some in-person book events for my new book, The Book of Stuck. And if you want to know when and where those events are going to be happening, join my email list or check out my Facebook and my LinkedIn and my YouTube channel and my Instagram. And if you want to know when virtual book events are going to happen, as I start to schedule those, you can check into all of those places as well, my website and all of my social media platforms. So if there's something you want help with related to a life transition, feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to connect with you. And remember that it's totally okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Have an amazing week and take care.